Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I must say that, yeah, sometimes even I have no idea where I am, and so because I'm kind of have a job in the UK, that's the main one, but still have something in Hungary, which is my origin. So sometimes I'm always lost where I am. And actually, that was also for yesterday. It's quite interesting to stand here for the third time already in a row because it's like, of course, like science education, and I'm doing like a part in a business education. But my first paper 2 years ago that was written by colleagues, and accidentally I have to come here just to make a presentation on that, and I stuck here. And I know that the practical example will be from a business education and an entrepreneurship education, what I will talk about today. But I think still the tools what I will show you, on one hand, won't be unfamiliar, so they will be familiar things that just to connect to your speech in the morning. And on the other hand, and that will be like at the end some of the findings and the future way. I think you can most likely you use them already, or you can apply in your curricula or in your activities at your classes. So what I made is like some strategy or some tools. How we can increase students' accountability. And I know that's like a general question at all, but on the other hand, I think it's even more important after the COVID period. What we discovered in the UK and at Aston University in Birmingham and many other places, that yeah, the way how students' involvement and yeah, accountability is different from the previous ones. So what can we do? What can we change? And we just made a systematic literature review on that one based on the last publication from the last 1.5 years with quite high quotations. That was what we done, but I don't want to focus on the research itself in the presentation. You will have it in the paper, but I will mention the tools, the outcome of the what we did, and I will give you from two methods. I will give you a little bit more insight from our practice. So this is what I wanted to. So this is some kind of like the structure, what I want to follow, but already just talked about it. So the practical examples will come from the Team Academy education or the Team Academy approach. This is like a practical entrepreneurship education coming from Finland, or we started more than 32 years ago in a small city called Jyväskylä. And it's a hands-on practical education, totally different to the traditional classroom education. So my official position is also a team coach. We are coaching students teams to achieve better failures, and just to coming back also, one of our event this year was the celebration of the failure in the studies and also in the business movement. And on the other hand, all the frameworks are different. If you can see, we call our student team entrepreneurs because they work in the teams and running their own businesses. There are no classrooms. Usually what we used to say, there was like coaching groups or coaching facilities and like an open office hub, and they work, and to be honest, they live as well. So 24/7, and they spend all the nights there and so on. It's a self-guided education, so not like the teaching what we call many times. And it's really interesting. That is also one tool how you can set up your own goals, but the whole system is based on this one. There are no exams, of course. It's like an academic program, so they need to deliver something, but it's much more what we call whether practical assessment or portfolios, what they can gain during the whole academic year, which is in the UK 3 terms, and then we assessing those portfolios. Also, like in brackets, I would say it's quite hard because on one hand, this is like a coach program, but at the end, I need to assess my students. So it's kind of like a confrontation. How can you be like a coach, but at the same time, you are a teacher. So it's also quite an interesting one. There is not exactly like an external control, but it's like self-organization. And yeah, they don't do only simulations, they run their own businesses. So this was the framework that we got the practical insights. And you will see that maybe, and I was wondering on that when I just made my presentation, that maybe like a systematic literature review is not so exciting and not so colorful. So not the next one, but the slides afterwards, you would see that at least what I'm expecting, or that will be spring and the good weather or whatever. So at least from the pictures, maybe you will be impressed. There are some conditions generally in the literature saying that how can we increase the students' accountability. The first one is the open and honest communication. The second is the supportive learning environment. And the third one is the appropriate infrastructure. To be honest, in this Team Academy approach that I have been participating for more than 15 years already in 3 different countries, the first 2 is quite okay, everyone is happy with that one. If we have like question marks, then it is the last one. So how can you set up in a higher education, in like a traditional higher education institution, those kind of infrastructural frames that allows students to learn or to be educated in a totally different way than in like a frontal education. Let's say, how can students access 24/7 a room that they can work in, security and so on. It's really, really interesting situation. So yeah, and those will be the scriptures. So how can we in this, what kind of strategies do we have to increase students' accountability? The first one are group projects. And of course, you know these ones. You apply these ones to group project. What we find in the literature, and I set up all the ones that, okay, what are the benefits and what are the solutions, what are the challenges and the solutions of this one. Of course, like when they are working in teams, then or in groups, what are the difference? We can strengthen the collective responsibility of the students, and those kind of skills can be developed, like communication, teamwork, problem solving, and also it's really interesting how we can say that there is like the shared responsibility, your own responsibility also, but the team responsibility as well on the other hand. Of course, there is the challenge that most likely you face with this one as well, that the participation level is not the same, so it's like uneven, and there are like the free riders as well, staying in the background or whatever, and then how can we deal with that? So of course, like you can do a priori set up like the roles, and you can define the roles quite clearly what they need to follow, and it's quite like, especially after the COVID, the digital collaboration tools, the use of the digital collaboration tools, which like kind of like can like monitor your participation in the group and the involvement as well. The second is the peer review. The peer review system enables students to take responsibility on a peer, on another student, and it can work in very different ways as well. Whether it's only a subject-based one or like whether it is for the whole year. The end in practice would be, and it's just a mentioning, in the second and the third year in our undergraduate program, students have like a peer from the year group what they work in, and this peer is kind of like enables them to monitor the development also in a business one, also in an academic way, but sometimes also we wouldn't say that they are the best friends, and it's not exactly the good thing when they are very good friends, but still somehow it's a good support also in the private or the individual life. How can you find the balance between your studies and also like the business activities and your private life? What we discovered, and also it is in the literature, that when you have like a peer within your studies, it enables you to understand the expectation from the curriculum much better. And it's also interesting because the questions what they ask from each other, and they need to report at least one time in a term what from the collaboration, that the question what they ask from themselves, from each other, it's much more honest and much more deepest what they would ask from a teacher. So it's really interesting how they work. There could be, of course, biases, and there could be also like unfair evaluations when there is not exactly the same thing. So you can implement sometimes also anonymous peer review. So just collecting feedback from peer or peers anonymously, and then maybe it's more honest that way. This is what I would like a little bit more detailed highlight. Whether it's like a team-based assessment and or like a class-wide grade distribution. Of course, in this case, we can say that everyone is responsible for the team performance. So participating in a team, also that one also brings these personal connections quite hard together, and also digital tools can track it. What I would like to mention, evolving also like peer assessment is quite a good one. In our practical assessments, which are usually 40% of the grade in the whole year in one subject, we apply a grade allocation. It's quite interesting. So what they deliver students, we as like teacher or academics, we'll say that, okay, it's let's say 68. That is the grade for the whole team. And on like a priorly set up criteria, they need to discuss how they will share the grade within the team. So saying that if the average of the grade is 68, some of the students can have 74, but then the average, the mean of the grades should be 68. So some of them should be like say 60 or whatever. And of course, it's very, very interesting because first they need, before the task or delivering solution, they need to set up the criteria, how they will share, how they will allocate the grades among themselves. Of course, somehow they need to set up as well how they can share the grades and what are the expectations, what will be the collaboration and what will be the task allocation, and how they will measure the performance of each other, which is very interesting, but quite peaceful. Then they deliver the task. They will have the grades, and they need to discuss how they will share those grades, which I must say it's not peaceful. So, or sometimes it's not peaceful, because everyone thinks that my performance was really good, so I deserve a better grade than the average of the team. But of course, how can everyone better be than the team average? And if someone is better, then someone is not better, and the argument and so on. So there is like a coach session, at least one, but sometimes more, coach session when we go through on this process. It's a huge development in the communication and the argument on the performance, but this is how can you use the priorly set up criteria, and then how can you apply them really in the evaluation of the performance. It's really interesting. So they need to do the grade allocation based on that one. If they are not able to do it in 1 week or 5 days, depending on the task, then there are two solutions: whether we coaches will decide the grade allocation or everyone will have the mean. And usually when people just put more energy in the task delivery, then they are not happy with that one. So they would like to find some solution, and it's also like tension in the team, but in the team bonding and in the team development, it's quite important and quite challenging. So this is the description of the task, and actually they need to agree, they need to sign kind of like a contract to each other after the shared grade allocation. So this is the document that we're expecting after the allocation, just to share it with us, and then they will get this grade. It's also quite interesting how it can be sometimes quite hard, but that is that one. And I just brought some quotes, some ideas, and some opinion on that one. So we apply it also in the year 1 and year 2 and year 3 as well in different practical assessment. they just said, I think the shared grade process is a great way to stimulate what kind of dynamics a team goes through. And it's quite interesting. It allows each person on the team to take responsibility. And actually, it's also measured and it's also granted. So if you take like a higher responsibility, more tasks, then you can get like a better grade. And it's also it can be like an excellent motivation for people. And it's really interesting also to see how it is developing during the term and during the years. The next one is the public presentation and/or exhibition. Both could be quite important, and generally in the literature review we found that it says that it fosters professionalism on whatever the delivery. The preparedness of the student is much higher when there is like some kind of external control is coming from outside. And of course, we need to take into consideration that there is anxiety, that there is like a stress, how they deal with that, how we can work with that. And so we need to bring down like an adequate support, and the preparation could be done. What we implemented in the last 3 years already in our program, it was not a presentation, but like a public exhibition, and I just brought some picture from that. It was a poster exhibition and fair. At our program, in every 6 weeks, we have I would say like a progression report. It's called Houston's Calling. Houston's Calling because the astronauts from the space, they called it Houston, we have a problem. So that is the Houston's Calling. Houston, we have a problem as well. And it's like a traditional presentation. It happens in every 6 weeks. But 3 years ago, we changed one of this progression report with a poster fair and exhibition. So what you can see here, it is the MBA lounge in our business school. So they have like a free spaces and they need to prepare poster on their project. And there is like an open exhibition. They need to prepare also the PR of the event and inviting people there and usually gaining a lot of feedback. Of course, they can, so they can sell their products as well. I think that was like a sugar-free cocoa from Africa. They are running like a travel agency, quite a good one. I was with them in North Wales. And just like the general space. So it's quite a good one. It was only 3 hours, quite intense, a lot of visitors, also from the universities and from external, and they were much different. The way of the delivery and the involvement was much better generally. So this was also from one. The self-regulated learning. It gives much more control and much more action to the students. But of course, especially it's a big shift. So coming from like a frontal education, from a secondary school or a college, it's a big shift, a mindset shift, that how can you now do like a self-regulated learning. So that's why it's quite important to coach teams and also sometimes like individually them. This is like the framework that yes, for example, in the first year and the second year, every term at least once, but in second year twice, we have like a one-to-one meeting for 1 hour with every student, and it just monitors the development of them because they need to make this self-regulation. And the last one is like the transparent evaluation criteria. Is much more like based on in the literature is much more the rubric-based evaluation, which we can share on beforehand. On one hand, it's a must, but on the other hand, is how can we use the rubrics in a proper way that they can already before submitting or end the submission, they can measure their performance as well, and how can it contribute to the better outcomes of the classes. So these were the 6 methods or the ways which were mentioned in the literature. Usually, I think it was quite interesting for us just to see that in those kind of entrepreneurship education that we are running in different universities, we mostly apply all of them. And I think the question is that, okay, what is the balance in between? So we can use them, or how can we use them? What is the efficiency? What I mentioned at the start, we're also quite conscious that you can use those kind of tools in any education. So just increasing the accountability of the students. And the other one is that, yeah, it was like now a systematic literature review, but we can do it like a multi way in many years after each other, just to see whether the impact of those kind of methods will be also longitudinal for the students or not. So thank you for your attention.